The women's national championship is set to tip off on Sunday afternoon as UConn will battle the defending national champions South Carolina and Tampa Bay. Florida and New York Post women's sports reporter Madeline Kenney, she is in Tampa covering the Final Four this weekend, and she joins us now. Maddie, how's it going?
It's going well. Thank you so much for having me.
Always glad to talk some women's hoops with you. And Maddie, let's start with the basics here because South Carolina and UConn, they are meeting. This is a heavyweight national title bout, you could say that. What excites you the most about this particular matchup between these two powerhouse programs?
I think in a lot of ways that, and we were just talking about this off camera, but this has the potential to be an instant classic. I mean, you have Paige, who's going for her last chance at winning a national title, putting an end to the longest drought that Geno Auriemma has experienced since he won his first one in 1995. And then you also have Dawn Staley. Like, they have this budding dynasty. I mean, I think you can even argue that they've already taken up residency in the dynasty territory based off of how much success that they've had in recent years. That it's like kind of the old guard versus the new guard, and they play. They're both very defensive minded teams. Connecticut can shoot the three ball really well. South Carolina can be physical inside, so it's going to be a really good matchup, and I think it's going to be a good game, like down to the wire from the start of the game to the end.
Yeah, you and I were talking about this. I'm really excited about this one because I think this is a fantastic matchup. I think it's great for the sport, and it's going to be really interesting. Now, when you looked at the national semifinal games, they were not as competitive as we might have thought they would be. And first off, we saw South Carolina. They handled Texas with authority in the Final Four on Friday night. What stood out to you the most about Dawn Staley's squad in that win, and how has their depth, because we know how deep of a team they are, continued to shine throughout this tournament?
Yeah, I mean, I think you cannot overstate how big it was that Madison Booker got into foul trouble and wasn't available for a lot of the first half. I think she was limited to like 9 minutes, and you could feel the dynamic of the game change as soon as she left the court. And so I think like her not being out there and being able to be their go-to offensive weapon and the anchor on defense kind of put Texas out of its rhythm in a lot of ways. And that allowed South Carolina to kind of get in and start scoring and running up the score in the way that we saw. I think the other thing to keep in mind too is that South Carolina, a lot of their reserve players could be starters at a lot of other Division I programs. They have the best bench depth in college basketball, men's or women's. And so I think that that's another layer to what makes South Carolina so hard to beat, is that they might not have one generational star, but they have several star players and an extremely deep bench, which makes them, that's why they've had so much success this season.
Yeah, they are deep, and you're right about that. They have a bunch of ladies on that team that can start at a lot of other D1 programs for sure. Now, in the second national semifinal, Maddie, we saw UConn. They dominated UCLA. What does that performance tell us about where Geno Auriemma's team is right now, especially with Paige Bueckers leading the charge? She's looked like a woman on a mission here. Where is this UConn team right now in your eyes?
Yeah, I mean, UConn absolutely blitzed them. I mean, that was just an insane dismantling of a team that had been the number one team for most of the season and was the number one overall seed in this year's tournament. And I think the thing that we're seeing from UConn is that they're peaking at the right time. Like, this is UConn playing its best basketball at the most important time of the year, which is, a lot of winning championships is that right time of peaking. It's luck in some ways too, when it comes to like health and everything. And so I think we're seeing the best version of UConn basketball. And Paige, it's not just Paige. Paige had 16 points and was an absolute force defensively in last night's game, but it's also Sarah Strong, what she's done as a freshman. It's AZ Fudd getting going early. I thought she was due for a big game, and she delivered with 19 points in the first half. And I think there's a lot of other moving pieces into this UConn team that makes them such a formidable threat.
Yeah, they have looked really strong. A lot of other players stepping up beside Paige Bueckers there. Now, you talked about this a little bit at the top here because this coaching matchup that we're going to see in this championship game, it is elite. Dawn Staley versus Geno Auriemma. From your perspective, how do their coaching styles differ and their strategies also differ? What adjustments might we see in this particular game from both of these coaches?
Both coaches have the ability to have the proven ability to make adjustments, especially at halftime. We've seen it in the Elite Eight games in different ways. We saw it in the Sweet 16. We've seen it several points this season. And so I think the biggest thing is Dawn Staley. She has a very calm approach to the games. Like she can be intense with her players, but after Connecticut absolutely destroyed them on their own home court back in February, Dawn knew that that was not their best version. She didn't have to tell her players that. They just kind of knew it. And that's kind of the culture that they're establishing there. They know what the expectations are, and Dawn doesn't have to continue to repeat it. And so I think there's that. And then you have Geno, who can be fiery, he's also good at making the adjustments. I think that you have somebody who is so established and proven, and winning is so synonymous with him on the sidelines. And who's to say how many more years he's going to do it for? He said earlier today that he's been contemplating retiring 5 times every year for the last few years. But he still thinks that he has 5 or so more years in him. And then you have Dawn, who has such a bright future, and I think that really has the opportunity to make South Carolina a perennial champion.
Yeah, it's really two great coaches, and Dawn, is rising. Geno's been a legend in the game, we know for sure. So it's going to be very interesting to see how both these coaches have their teams prepared and the adjustments they make in this game. Now, Maddie, we've heard this before covering basketball and pretty much in a lot of different sports. Defense, offense wins championships. So which team do you believe has the defensive edge in this one, and what matchups on the defensive end of the floor could be pivotal for either squad here?
Yeah, I think that it, South Carolina might have a little bit of the edge defensively, just because they are really good at controlling the tempo and pace and playing at a slower pace. You know, they they are very organized, and I think their ability to score inside could be really problematic potentially for UConn. But the other thing when it comes to UConn is that they're so good at capitalizing on their opposing team's mistakes. Like if you make a bad shot, they're going to throw it up the court and get scoring in transition. And so I think transition defense is going to be so important for South Carolina specifically. And then I also think perimeter defense as well. There's a lot of shooters on that team, and pick and roll defense. I mean, I know I'm just saying like every defense possible right now, but the UConn can score in so many different ways and levels, and South Carolina kind of can present the same troubles too.
Yeah, it is not. Look, it sounds like defense winning championships is easy. It is not going to be either for either of these teams who are very good defensively, but also, as you said, can get it done on the offensive end. So both coaches, both teams have their hands full in trying to stop the other. All right, Maddie, final thing for me. We need a pick. We need a pick here from you. Who's cutting down the nets on Sunday night? What is the biggest key in your eyes to victory in this game? Give me a prediction. Who's winning, and what's the biggest key to them winning?
I think UConn's going to win. And I think that because the way that they've just been playing the last few games, the fact that they're playing some of their best basketball at this moment, you have a generational superstar in Paige who has the ability to take over games. You have Sarah Strong, who Dawn Staley said has the potential to be the greatest player to ever come out of UConn in 3 or so years. There's just so much top heavy talent on this team and scoring opportunities that I think that they're in the end if they can get hot and get going and have a lead by halftime, I think that this is gonna be UConn's game. So score wise, I'm trying to think of what I said. I think it's like gonna be 77-68.
Okay, that's a solid win for UConn there. UConn's who I picked in my bracket to win. I had UConn over South Carolina. I think it's going to be a good one.
I had South Carolina in my bracket.
Oh, you did?
I think just watching how the games have unfolded over the last few weeks, and I had USC in the championship game. Obviously, Juju's injury totally changed the trajectory of that postseason for them. But yeah, so we'll see.
You know what? I will say this, Maddie. It feels with UConn, at least watching them, and you've watched this closer and been around more than me, but it feels like they're on a mission to do this for Paige, right? It feels like it would be that nice
Yeah.
storybook ending to see her go out on top. But look, it's not going to be easy. South Carolina absolutely will have something to say, and we will see how that all plays out. On Sunday afternoon, women's national championship game, UConn versus South Carolina. South Carolina, looking to go back-to-back. UConn looking to end that title drought. We'll see what happens. Madeline Kenney, she will be all over it for us here at the New York Post. Maddie, enjoy the game. We will talk to you soon, hopefully after the game, and we'll talk to you more about this, and then it's on to WNBA season.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Anytime.